Now, it's a rare occasion, not, when the Lib Dems make a dramatic U-turn. But they've done it again. Chris Huhne, the Energy Secretary, who is, of course, the second most senior, maybe third most senior Liberal Democrat in the coalition government, has, after a lifetime of campaigning against nuclear energy, now announced that 8 new nuclear power stations are to be opened in Britain. I'm with him. I agree with him. Britain needs nuclear energy. Darren Johnson, as you might expect, as the Green Party's London Assembly member, takes a directly contrary view. And that's why I'm glad, as always, to have him here on the show. Darren, welcome, my friend. First of all,
good evening, George.
Tell me this. Were you surprised at Chris Huhne's U-turn or not?
Well, they've done a U-turn on just about everything else, on the time that they'd be taking to pay off the deficit, on tuition fees, on other things. So it's no surprise that they've done a U-turn on nuclear power as well.
Will it cause them trouble at mill and inside the party?
Well, you look at some of the results that Lib Dems are getting in council by-elections in urban areas. They seem to be doing okay against in Tory council seats in the more sort of shire counties and so on. But in urban areas, Sheffield last night there was a council by-election. They were getting utterly trashed, and I think that's going to be a pattern that continues, because a lot of people voted for the Lib Dems as a left of centre green alternative to Labour. They're certainly not getting that on either count.
They got humped in the Tower Hamlets directly elected mayoralty yesterday also, so you're right, they're beginning to pay a price in electoral terms, and I suppose in terms of dissatisfaction at the base and the rank and file of the party. Maybe over time we'll see some of that. But let's turn to the issue, Darren. A lot of people can't understand why you and your friends, who are forever talking about global warming, should be against a means of producing energy that doesn't contribute to any global warming.
Well, obviously, George, we both agree we've got to get really serious about tackling climate change and global warming. But the previous government's own Sustainable Development Commission actually did a very, very detailed study of this, and they concluded that even if nuclear power was capacity was doubled in this country, it would only lead to an 8% reduction in CO2 emissions. We need to be much, much more ambitious than that. We can't just get by with an 8% reduction in CO2 emissions. And the cost of nuclear power, the huge, huge cost of disposal and everything, just doesn't make it a viable option in terms of tackling climate change, compared to investing that money directly into various sorts of green energy and also into energy conservation as well. We need a massive nationwide program to really get every home, every school, every public building, every library and so on really insulated to high standards to cut energy use. We really need a big insulation program. We need to invest massively in wind power, but also in solar panels on buildings throughout the country, and we can meet our own needs through green energy rather than dangerous and very, very expensive nuclear power.
Well, I agree we should do all of those things, but why can't we do all of them plus nuclear energy? Doesn't it make sense to have a balanced energy policy whereby we develop a plethora across all these different forms of energy, so that we're not dependent on anyone, and so that the thousand flowers can bloom?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. We need the balance. It's just a question: should nuclear power be part of that balance? I don't think it is. We're committed to spending £100 billion on decommissioning the current set of nuclear power stations in this country. If we build more, then that's billions more tied up in decommissioning. We've not sorted out, even after all these years, even after more than half a century now, we've not sorted out how to deal with radioactive waste safely, and it's there, very, very dangerous, very, very radioactive for hundreds of years to come. And my I think the strongest argument against nuclear power in terms of tackling the problems that we face now in terms of energy and climate change is just the time it takes to get the things built and through the planning process and everything.
Well, that's because that's because of all the campaigns you run against them.
It's not just that. They do take time to build, but of course we will be campaigning. We will obviously be campaigning against them because we don't think it's the right approach. But it's not, given the urgency that we need to act in terms of tackling climate change, the speed of actually commissioning nuclear power stations, you just wouldn't get them up and running in time to make a serious contribution to actually reducing our CO2 emissions. So we really, rather than tying up billions and billions of pounds in nuclear power, of public money that would have to, everywhere nuclear power is operating and has operated, it's always had to be subsidised by the taxpayer, by the public purse.
Although
so
Chris,
rather than waste that money...
Chris Huhn says this will not be the case with these new 7.
Well, what happens if a nuclear power company, whoever it is, goes bust? No government on earth is going to say, well, fine, we'll just let you disappear and we won't bother taking responsibility to clear up the mess. Of course, the government has always got to step in. If these companies disappear, if they go bankrupt, if they can't meet the costs of disposing of the waste safely, of decommissioning and so on. So the public purse has always got to step in, which is why I think it'd just be a disaster to go down this route, tie up billions and billions of pounds of public money when we should be investing that money in reducing energy across the country, making our homes more energy efficient and so on, and also investing in the real boost in green energy that we need, in wind turbines, solar power and so on.
Darren Johnson, always a pleasure to disagree with you. The Green Party's London Assembly member arguing the case against nuclear power. And that's another of tonight's subjects.